So next up is a short presentation from James Leroux, the leader of the behavior research team at Veridin. Previously, James was the chief of security operations for the executive office of the president at the White House. His other positions have included founding the DIA Computer Network Defense Center Defensive Countermeasures Team, Enterprise Countermeasures Lead at the U.S. Cyber Command, and Section Manager at the NSA CSS Threat Operations Center. Please welcome James Leroux.
I have the slide remote, or is it up here? Oh. Right on top. Hey, so good morning. This whole ATT&CKcon has been really awesome. I've heard a lot of people talk in similar to veins of what I've been thinking. So, you know, it's great to hear that because that means that there's probably something to the way that I'm thinking, and that yeah, it's just awesome to organize the community in this way. So did a pretty good job introducing myself. Really, what kind of keeps me motivated in the security space lately, right, is to try to take cybersecurity from kind of a black art where you just throw some money at it and hope something happens to like more of like a regular business unit. And I think that we're on the right track here with discussions about measurement and I've heard like scientifically and all that kind of keywords here today. And really, like, at the end of the day, my motivation is we should be able to go to a C-level suite and say, hey, here is my plan. I think we're weak here. Here's the action that I can take, and this is the expected result. So they're going to want things like, what is your expected result? And right now, we're kind of the only business unit that can say, like, it's green, or like, we think it'll make it better. I heard this guy say that he really likes this firewall. And even notoriously kind of difficult areas where, like advertising, for example, if you go Fortune 500 board and you're pitching an advertising campaign, they're going to want like a forecast of what the result is going to be, right? So that's kind of my motivational end and why I've been working on the things that I have. So real quick, I'm a new father, so I'm obligated to practice dad jokes. So I have the opportunity here. So time flies like an arrow, fruit flies like a banana. Gets stuck in your head, sorry. So hybrid analysis, who's familiar with it? Probably a lot of people. But basically it is a public sandbox that anybody really can upload whatever they want. With some very light registration, you can get a lot of data. Their API is great. You don't have to pay them a whole bunch of money to get a lot of really good information. So a few months back, shortly before the call for papers, they started introducing something where attack tactics would get reported on along with all the rest of the malware report. And I thought that was really interesting because as part of that bringing a level of rigor and scientific method and all that kind of good stuff, I believe that that kind of common framework that the last talk was talking about on detections is kind of necessary. What keeps me up at night about attack is more, hey, I have this coverage. We have red, yellow, green. Well, a lot of that we've heard is based off of people huddling together and decomposing what those APT strategies are. And then maybe devising a couple tests. That's great work. It's a lot of work for just one APT group. So I think about like, how can we scale this? So how can we apply this kind of line of thinking on a machine level, really? Because the machine is much more consistent than you are as far as categorization. If I take the same APT group and give you like an incident report and malware, and then I give it to somebody else, chances are you're not going to come up with the exact same attack tags. So that's a consistency problem, because when you take that report that you've built and have that red, yellow, green heat map that you're bringing and presenting to your executives, Executive A might get a picture of, hey, we are really great at preventing lateral movement. Well, you only tested one thing, or maybe you didn't test, maybe you tested one method of a technique. Whereas somebody else might be like, okay, well, we're yellow, but we tested different things. There's not like a mutual understanding of what that test encompasses. So if those two top level guys were to talk to each other, they're gonna say like, well, crap, mine is yellow and yours is green. How'd you do that? And like, really, it might be a complete deception, really, because your yellow is maybe more accurate than that one green test that you ran. So that's why I like computers to do that hard stuff for us. So really, a lot of this talk is about that consistency aspect. And if we can't do those measurements consistently, we're really not producing a report that is like actionable, in my opinion, or at least actionable on the, hey, I'm gonna spend $20 million as a result of your findings. Like, if I'm a CEO or on the board or whatever, I want a lot more than like, you think that it's yellow, cool, show me like how you came up with that. And like, if it doesn't pass the middle school science level test, then I'm gonna be a little bit concerned that my money isn't gonna actually go as far as you say it's going to. So you can see consistency is a very big part. The Steve Jobs quote up there, if you want to use a framework to make educated decisions, it better be consistent. Well, you didn't say that. I did, sorry. But I'll steal his credibility for now. You gotta use the adversary's technique sometimes. So when hybrid analysis started doing some of these attack taggings, technique taggings, I used their awesome API to go and like scrape a bunch of stuff. The title here is 200. I mean, this could easily be way more. But what I'm doing here is I'm gonna take my top 5 and kind of see if we can get some insight into how they're doing things. So off the bat, execution, right? Service execution is the most common. Okay, maybe that's reasonable. And WMI is up there at 16. What's missing here for me is like the exploit client side application, I think it is, because that covers like all crimeware almost, like any drive-by exploit that's gonna be there. You have a malicious flash file, that's there. So we're not seeing that, which is kind of telling. And I don't know if that is because they don't have a detection on the back end. I suppose that they're probably using something along the lines of Yara, but I don't know, right? Moving on to persistence, well, here's a big problem. The items that I submitted were all pretty much Windows executable. So why is a Linux and Mac tactic #1, or technique, excuse me. So that's a problem. That back-end signature, or whatever it is they're using to classify that, needs to be adjusted probably. And look, this isn't really trying to beat up on them or anything like that. I've seen things change in how they're doing this over time, and they are making improvements constantly. On the discovery side, like this should be a really interesting one, because discovery kind of covers both the network side and the host side. So a lot of people have been talking about how attack is not a linear thing. Well, if I'm doing host-based discovery, that's like a huge category. If I'm doing network-based discovery, that's a huge category. So we should see quite a bit of different techniques here, and we kind of do, which is positive. On the collection side, email collection is like way bigger than I thought it would be. I mean, it's still 30 out of 200, but how much malware, you have to keep in mind that the subject of this is executables. So how many pieces of malware are just automatically, without any C2 interaction, going to be collecting malware and getting it ready for exfil right off the bat? I mean, I'm sure there's some pieces of malware that do that, but Is it 30? I don't know. Command and control is kind of the same way. Again, this is a sandbox. I'm sure they can do some limited command and control interaction. It's also notable that, like, hey, commonly used protocol isn't on there. Now, I can guess that it's got to be difficult to sort out what is part of actual C2 and what is like, hey, I'm just doing a DNS check for my home base where, you know, where you register our product or whatever, right? Or to load some kind of resource within the artifact. So that would be really difficult to kind of cut down on those sort of false positives. So if we back out, really, what we're seeing is, okay, there's some decent coverage here. This is all the items are green or techniques that I saw during my analysis, and red doesn't have anything. You know, but like, it's a decent start. Anybody who's tried to do this sort of thing, it's not easy, right? So ultimately, this kind of circling back to, we need a way to have a common agreement on how to categorize artifacts and behaviors in an automated way. Because you might look at this and say like, hey, that's not very good, right? But I can guarantee you that if you run this like a week from now with the same configuration, you're going to get the same results. And I can compensate in my reporting for problems along that line. I can't compensate in a report that you felt like, you know, somebody cut you off on the way to work and somehow that changed the way you think and you now classify something differently. So I think it's important, and this is really kind of one of those call to action things, for us to kind of agree upon all that good stuff and all the how we want to classify artifacts. And even if it doesn't cover 100%, we need to agree upon that. Otherwise, we're going to get to a point where dirty vendors like me, well, not me, but are basically going to start rigging the system. So they're going to say like, we have 100% coverage. I mean, that's going to be the reality of it. And if we can't go back and say like, okay, show me the data that you're using, show me how you're classifying everything, and let's bubble that up. If you can't do that, you shouldn't basically trust that overall report. So, and I'm not saying that anybody's doing anything wrong, but like, you can be misleading your leadership if you're reporting on something that is based off of a feeling, right? We need to take this seriously and be able to actually measure the artifacts. So this is a dialogue, and I look forward to any questions, and let's figure out whatever that hashtag is.
Yeah, I made a proposal to Katie. So we have time probably for one question. One question for James. Going once, going twice.
I'm glad I explained everything.
Absolutely. All right, then please join me in thanking James.